Live events have experienced a total disruption. Owners, operators, and teams have had to quickly make changes to both their venues and their business models. Many were left with questions about recouping lost revenue, engagement with fans, and the future state of reopening safely under scrupulous guidelines. In some cases, these guidelines have been changing by the day. Today, our partner Forefront joins us to share their experiences, helping owners and teams alike navigate this ever-changing environment. Forefront is a full-service innovation, analytics, and strategy firm that works with teams and leagues around the world. Forefront's mission of putting partners at the forefront of the industry, using these strengths and creating deep, long-lasting relationships is something that Samsung has realized. I can personally tell you that we began working with them a little over a year ago when this pandemic started to help teams and leagues navigate these challenging times through use of technology solutions. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by Josh Kritzler, who's one of the founders of Forefront. Josh, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, Josh, we're in March. It was March 11th that the world shut down. I remember I was flying home from New Jersey from my office, landed in Atlanta, and just started seeing every single sport canceling. Can't believe we're going up on a year right now with basically no sports or limited capacity. In the past year, as somebody else like you in the sports industry, I've only been inside of two venues. I've been inside of one pro football stadium and one pro baseball stadium. If you were to walk into a stadium or an arena right now and talk to one of these decision makers, what advice would you give for them right now in March?
Yeah, well, first of all, you've been in two more stadiums than most people around the globe, so you're ahead of the curve on that one. But let's break down that question into two sections, right? What advice would we give to the consumer, and what advice would we give to the team? And I think first and foremost on the team perspective, there really is no return to normal. In all of the teams that we're consulting with and for, the idea that you can just wait this out and then sort of return to the venues as though nothing happened is not a reality. And so I think every team has to think differently from a consumer perspective, whether you've never been inside a stadium before or you're a 20-year season ticket holder. The idea is it's going to feel like the first time you were in that venue. And I think teams need to approach it as such. The advice we're giving to teams is really think about that fan journey. So how is a fan going to feel safe and comfortable inside of a stadium in 2021 and 2022 in ways that they never thought about before? I was actually recently speaking to a behavioral scientist in the UK talking about sort of learned behavior, and we have to relearn all of these behaviors that have been part of our everyday for so long. So as part of that fan journey, we're going to have consumers think about fanless and frictionless touch points, such as cashless payments for parking, temperature checks at the gates, facial recognition technology, much more integrations with mobile, and moving away from sort of static technologies into much more digital. The biggest opportunity, too, is to use sort of data and analytics to start to better understand the consumers in ways that we've never understood before.
So talking about relearning behavior, when you go back to sports, Josh, you're going to have to relearn how to drink a beer and watch a ball game?
Those things I know how to do, and I've been practicing on my couch.
Okay.
So, but I'll have to do with my family, correct?
Okay. So you talked about digital. With the industry so in flux, when you're talking to teams and talking about their digital assets, how do you tell them what those digital assets are worth right now? Are they worth more? Are they worth less? Why is that?
The answer is both. Sponsor needs are changing so rapidly. And at Forefront, we spend so much time working with our partners and our team partners on fair market valuations and benchmarking against other assets. And I think the idea is that teams need to be flexible in how they are delivering sponsorship assets to their brands. In speaking to the brand community, which we do every day, I think there was a "we're all in this together" attitude in the middle of 2020 when this all started. But as we turn the page into 2021 and new seasons, CFOs and CMOs are looking for value in ways that they have to deliver to their shareholders and make sure those investments are yielding a return. And so in a fanless environment, which we had over the last year, some experiential activations and hospitality have diminished in value, but flexible digital TV visitable signage has increased. And so on a go-forward basis, I think what we're going to see is brands start to look for new sponsorship assets, renegotiate existing contracts to meet those changing needs. And the teams that are willing to be flexible and create new moments of exclusivity and migrate to more TV visible digital signage are the ones that are going to be well positioned for long-term extensions with their partners. Those that are stuck in old models, trying to do business as usual or deliver on assets that might not necessarily be relevant, are going to be in trouble. And I think the other thing we're going to see quite a bit of is an increase in value of digital and mobile extensions to sponsorship. So how do you create geo-targeted digital assets on your mobile phone that create value with, frankly, there are sponsorship assets that teams already have but have probably been underutilizing under an old model.
That's interesting. The world as we know it when we talk to our partners has definitely changed. What about there's a lot of negatives from COVID, obviously, but specifically as it relates to live events, has there been any good that's come out of COVID?
I think our job is to find silver linings in what has, without question, been an incredibly challenging year to the sports and entertainment industry. But there absolutely are opportunities to be found within the challenges. And frankly, I think many teams operated in the "if it's not broken, don't fix it" mentality, right? And so what that means is there were a lot of silos within the team environment. So sponsorship didn't necessarily share information with ticket sales or hospitality or marketing or community. And so both the data and the collaboration was fairly siloed. And I think the teams that are doing it right in this time are sort of in the midst of a paradigm shift to create much more flexibility and collaboration amongst the organization. And frankly, fans benefit from that as well as sponsors, because with that becomes much more opportunity for data sharing. I think the idea that teams that have always done it a certain way or always delivered on the same sponsorship assets are now going to migrate to mobile and digital in a way that probably they didn't feel a need to in previous years. So with that, you're going to find frankly, the consumer will benefit, the fan will benefit, because the more data you have about me as a consumer, the more tailored the experience can be. So I think you're going to see a lot more mobile integrations into scoreboard and fan engagements. I think you're going to see the emergence of a lot more AR type technology as fans sort of move away from touch and feel experiences for the time being. And with that too, for every brand or category that has seen challenges during this time, there have also been some really incredible emerging categories in this time. So pet supply and pet ownership have increased dramatically. Home improvement and home gym equipment have increased dramatically. So if I'm a sponsorship seller on this, thinking about this, as many old companies that might be challenged, there's new and emerging categories that are going to be looking to sports and entertainment for the first time.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think what you're saying about the data around who's coming is really going to be invaluable to teams. I mean, I think that the teams and the leagues have realized that the competition of the living room, as I call it, sitting on your couch and watching a game is much more strong now with COVID. because of the health and safety concerns. Let's stay on that theme and let's talk about health and safety. So what are you seeing some interesting things as it relates to health and safety that teams or venues are doing?
Yeah, you talked about it is, we have to compete with the safety and security of the couch more so than ever. And in every fan survey that we've been a part of, making sure that health and safety is first and foremost is going to be priority number one. And with that, as I shared earlier, teams are really thinking about that fan journey, creating frictionless opportunities, creating opportunities within that fan journey to create security and safety. And there's a couple of things that I'll touch on is one, just the entering into the stadium. The teams that we're consulting with are looking at both facial recognition technology tied to tickets to cut down on that experience in those lines, as well as scalable temperature checks in which you can safely and securely move people into secondary screening opportunities if there are temperature spikes to make everyone else feel comfortable. The two biggest challenges, which might be surprising that we've talked to fans about, are both concessions and bathrooms. And so teams are thinking really hard about what the concession experience and the bathroom experience look and feel like in sort of the Stadium 2.0 upon the return. From the concession experience, if you think about it, that is where there's a lot of migration of people, long lines. And as a consumer, it's where I miss most of the game. And so the idea of mobile ordering and pre-ordering is first and foremost to both cut down on those lines, increase game time. And the unintended consequence of that is you are aggregating so much more data about the fans. And so the more I know about their consumer preferences and what do I buy and what do I purchase, the more the teams can then tailor those experiences to those fans. As it relates to bathrooms, this was number one in just about every fan survey in terms of their biggest concern and pain point. And the reality is it is very timely and costly to create large infrastructure programs from teams to build new bathrooms. And so the way to solve that is through technology and cutting down on existing wait time. So using mobile technology to identify as a fan which bathrooms are closest to my seats, which ones have short lines, again, gets me back to game time, as well as makes me feel safe and secure that I'm not congregating with a number of people over a long period of time.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was actually at one of the two venues I mentioned I've been at in the past year a couple weeks ago, and it was a baseball stadium, and they were talking about how if they have this data and they know that, Josh, you and your kids go in the seventh inning stretch every game to go get ice cream, they might send you a push notification to your phone to go between after the fifth inning to cut down on the lines, as well as ensure that you get that ice cream and somebody else can be there to enhance that experience. Let's keep talking about.
And by the way, if my children know that I got a push notification for ice cream, I'm definitely buying ice cream.
We know who's in charge in your house, Josh. So what about as far as experience and the fan experience? Technology is undoubtedly changing our industry. What does the future of the fan look like in terms of experience?
Yeah, that's a really good question. As you had mentioned, I think technology will be at the forefront of everything a team thinks about, whether it's related to the fan experience or health and safety, new sponsorship and inventory. All of that sort of converges in and around technology. One thing that's also interesting, and again, I think a net benefit for teams and for fans, is creating that frictionless experience opens up new opportunities. We've done a lot of fan surveys that a typical fan goes to their wallet 3 times during the course of an event. And so if I've prepaid for parking or have greater opportunities for merchandise or concessions, and I feel like some of those things are sunk costs, then per caps go up, right? I might buy that extra ice cream or that extra t-shirt if I feel like my parking experience has already been paid for, or if it's a touch of a button versus waiting in a 10 to 15 minute line. So I think that will be a net benefit to everything. You can't talk about the new fan experience without talking about 5G. And I think this is a real opportunity, frankly, for Samsung and their partners, because teams are just now scratching the surface of what they can do with better connectivity. How does that change the fan experience? What can we do? How do we share more content and become our own content producers? And so I think there's a massive opportunity to sort of take the 5G landscape and use that as a new testing ground for really cool emerging technologies. And frankly, from a team perspective, I think teams are going to be looking to do bigger things with fewer partners. As these technologies sort of integrate with each other, having big, reliable brands is going to be massively important to teams.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, especially on the 5G comment. I know you and I were on a call a couple of weeks ago, actually, where that came up, and everybody's looking to see 5G and practicality and what does that mean to them. And I'm pleased with the position we're at Samsung on that one. Well, let's talk about. I know you and I chat all the time about when are we going to get back to a game? When are we going to get back to a game? What's the data saying about other fans' desire to return to live events?
Yeah, the data is saying that fans want to return, but health and safety matters. And that in order to do so, and I think it's intuitive, right? I'm a sports fan at heart, and I want to return to the stadium environment, but I want to do so safely. And so we're finding that younger fans are more likely to return more quickly. And I think intuitively we've seen that. The ideal comeback conditions, over half of the respondents said they feel more comfortable at an outdoor event, which makes sense with the open air environment. And the cleaner, the better. At a bare minimum, sanitization and social distancing are a must. So, as much as we've talked about technology, there are also some things that teams are doing and can do with the existing tools that they have, simply changing ingress and egress, up and down aisles in a certain way, masking when appropriate, are all things that I think are going to be the new norm for a foreseeable future to get people comfortable getting back into the stadium en masse.
Interesting. Well, Josh, I always appreciate working with your organization, the data, the analytics, the innovation, the strategy. I'd like to think our mutual clients do as well. As we're bumping up on time here, could you leave the audience with just a snippet of parting philosophy on getting fans back? Like, what would be your advice, your closing remarks?
Yeah, just be flexible, be nimble, and be adaptable.
I think that's good. I would agree with you. I think a wise person in the industry once told me there are no answers, there's only updates. I can't remember who said that.
I think I know that now.
Hey, Josh, we really appreciate the time. We appreciate the partnership with Forefront. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.